Welcome back to the channel. In this one I want to talk to you a little bit, just casually have a chat about my new favourite combination, which is this bad boy, the Helios 44-2. And I've been using that in collaboration with this old chestnut, everyone's favourite, the Sony FX6. I've been using these two together in combination. I just wanted to break it down a little bit about my experience and why this has been helping me achieve some pretty incredible results. So firstly, this is the Helios 442. It's an old Soviet lens. They started making these lenses in 1967, so they're pretty old, and they have a really unique character to them. So they have this almost swirly bokeh, and depending on how old the lens is, they also have this almost like soft texture to them. These have become really popular because when you pair them with a modern sensor, and for me, my predominant art is video creation. I do a little bit of film photography, but my main thing is video. These offer a really unique perspective for a very cheap option and bring out some really cool characteristics. I absolutely love this lens, man. It's my favorite thing ever. If you've watched this channel before, you'll know that I did a video about the Canon FD 50mm, and that's an old vintage lens as well, and I spoke about the merits of that. That lens is a bit cleaner. It still has that softness, but it has a bit of a feel to it. But this one is really clearly distinct. Like, it has the real clear softness. The bokeh is very, very, very distinctive. I want to share with you my setup and the combination I've been using of late to achieve some pretty incredible results. Before jumping into the actual video itself, and I just want to put a disclaimer out. If you are thinking about going and buying one of these, which I would say, you know, they don't cost that much money, maybe like 50, 60 pounds or $100, depending on where you are in the world, they're a really sound investment. They are a great way to achieve a unique look for a very cheap amount of money. However, there is a lot of these flying around that are not legitimate. There's people selling them on the internet and they're not legitimate. Or another thing to bear in mind is certain ones that were built in certain time periods. They made 3 different iterations of this lens, and they're not all the same. They were made in different factories, but there's a marker inside the lens here, which if you take a little look online, do your research before you purchase, you can find out what are the pros and the cons of each one. But just something to bear in mind, that if you go out and buy a Helios 442, not every single one is going to be exactly the same. I actually think this is a pretty cool looking package. It looks a bit like a grenade, or, you know, like one of those old Call of Duty grenades back in the day. But I've got on here, and this adapter here basically conforms the screw mount of Helios 442 into a Sony E-mount. This is a relatively cheap adapter that you can buy. It costs £20 in the UK where I'm from, where I bought it. The website is K&F Concept. They also do step-up rings and other adapters for other lenses. They're pretty good. I had one for the Canon FD 50mm, worked perfectly fine. Just stick it onto the base of the lens there, screw it on, you're good to go. You then have this mount here, and there's a bit of clearance in between the mount to the Helios and the mount to your Sony camera. That just goes in there, screws in, and boom, you're away. And the upshot of this is when you put it into a Sony FX6, even though it's a full frame sensor and it's an old vintage lens which traditionally would have been used on more like super 35mm sensors or 16mm sensors, even on a full frame with this adapter, you don't have any vignetting. It actually just looks completely clean, which I was quite surprised by, because I know when I used a vintage lens on a full frame sensor before, I had to crop in quite a lot to get rid of the banding on the edges. So the Helios 442 has all those great characteristics. It's cheap enough to buy, it's cheap enough to get a conversion onto the Sony, and then, you know, you don't have to worry about any kind of quirks when you're using it in terms of the adaptation, especially if you want to use it with a full frame sensor, get all that nice data in. What I've been doing with this Sony FX6 and this Helios though, I've shot so far 4 different projects where I've used this lens. Not exclusively used this lens. So the first one that I shot was a Christmas advert at the bottom end of last year. Now that was shot exclusively on this lens, and you can see straight away it's like got a real nice soft characteristic to it. The other one that I did was the Birmingham City away football kit. . And we shot all of that in this botanical gardens in Birmingham, where I'm from. So when I shot the Birmingham City kit launch video, I had the FX6, I added the adapted Helios 442, I added some step-up rings onto the 442, which it takes quite a lot of step-up rings. These again are from K&F Concept. They're a bit janky, I can't lie. If you get them stuck, they can be a massive pain in the ass to get unstuck. And a Tiffin quarter pro mist filter on the top of it. And what I find is this combination of using the really modern cinema sensor in the Sony FX6, which develops really nice color, you know, whether you're using S-Log or S-Cinetone, it's just such a beautiful image that it captures. The color science is so beautiful on this camera. If you then pair that with the unique characteristics of a vintage lens, and then you also add some filtration on the top of that as well, the results that you get off the back of adding those different layers and textures in front of the sensor are really unique. They give you something that is really pleasing to the eye. So this one shoot that was done with Birmingham City for this away kit is another project. Another one was a season ticket video, which I shot for Birmingham City's women's first team. Again, that wasn't exclusively using this lens, but for some of the more kind of like details and moody shots, we use this lens. And then the other one shot more recently was for a university. We did an advert, and what we wanted to show was this almost dream state of these three individuals looking to their future. And in those cutaways, we use this lens because it offers that kind of like, with the halation of the pro mist and the kind of unique characteristics of the lens, it just kind of transforms you into this like enhanced reality, which is almost dreamlike. So there's 4 different projects which I'm really happy with how they came out, that have all been shot using this combination here. But for me, this is just something I really wanted to share with the audience here, because this combination has delivered me some of the shots that I would say I'm most happy with that I've achieved during my filmmaking career. This combination, you're talking maybe 120 to 160 pounds, I'd say, in that sort of region. The main 2 quirks to use in this are, firstly, it goes to an f2 aperture. That's obviously great to be able to get your f-stop that high. However, it's got this weird quirk where on the front of it, it has this clicker, and you need to change the clicker. The clicker essentially puts a block on how high or how low you can take your aperture. You have to move the clicker of the aperture, which releases the aperture ring adjuster, which is just behind it, to get the full scope of what aperture range is available. The other thing is, it's a vintage lens, so it's entirely manual. There is no autofocus. So if you're used to using autofocus, this is going to be new to you, but it will force you to become better at your craft. In summary though, although this lens does have its quirks, I really do strongly believe that using this combination of lens and filtration on a modern camera can help filmmakers achieve very unique looking shots and frames and very premium looking differentiated pieces of work. So if you're on the fence and you're thinking about buying a Helios 442, I'd say just do your research ahead of time so you know what kind of model you're getting, and then also do consider getting a modified one if you're looking to use this on professional shoots straight away. If you're just looking to experiment and try new things and see if you like it, you can't go wrong with spending, you know, 1 adapter, 1 lens, 80 quid, and give it a go and see what you think. Just a quick one to share my thoughts with you today on this new package that I found, which has been making such a difference to my filmmaking recently. I hope this was helpful. If it was, as always, I'll ask one thing: oil up that head, drop a little headbutt on the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Nice one. Peace.